People who married someone that cheated while dating, how's your marriage now? Story 1. She continued to cheat, so we got divorced. Then she cheated on the next man and they also got divorced, but she never learned her lesson. Now she is over 60 and she is lonely and unhappy. Story 2. Divorce. The reason is treason. Everyone, including me, thought we had a wonderful 13-year marriage and were trying to have a second child. Story 3. I know a guy who dated a girl in college and she cheated on him. Despite this, he still married her. Halfway through their marriage, she decided to try polyamory, she said. And the first person she started dating was the same guy she cheated on him with in college. Now their marriage is on the verge of collapse. Story 4. I found out that he cheated on me at the very beginning of our relationship. Then I thought that he had become faithful, and 3 years later we got married. It turned out that he cheated on me almost constantly throughout the entire 3 years of the relationship and 10 years of marriage, including the periods right before our wedding and immediately after the birth of our children. I don't know why I forgave him so many times. I think it was a combination of youthful hope and attachment formed out of trauma. Anyway, we are now divorced, and every night I enjoy the peaceful and beautiful sleep of a woman who knows that no one is cheating on her. Story 5. He cheated on me once when he was drunk and in college. Now he doesn't drink anymore. We went to therapy, and we've been married for almost 30 years. We have a happy life together. But I won't say that this is a typical situation. Most relationships do not recover after cheating. Story 6. We divorced and I haven't seen him for over 30 years. He cheated throughout our entire marriage. He blamed the lack of sex life for his infidelities, but confused cause and effect. He cheated constantly and didn't want to use condoms, so I stopped having sex with him in bed to maintain my health. It didn't matter how often we engaged in bed pleasures. We had periods when this happened almost daily, but he still found time for cheating. Story 7. We divorced and I haven't seen him for over 30 years. He cheated on me throughout our entire marriage. He blamed the lack of sex life for his infidelities, but confused cause and effect. He constantly cheated and did not want to use protection, so I stopped sex with him in order to maintain my health. It didn't matter how often we engaged in bed pleasures. There were periods when this happened almost daily, but he still found time for cheating. Story 8. My marriage is amazing. I trust my husband completely again, and he is the love of my life. But just because everything worked out for us doesn't mean it will happen for everyone. We both had to put in a lot of effort to get to the level of our relationship that we have now. I will never judge those who don't want to put in that much work. In addition, cheaters often do not experience true repentance. And without this, reconciliation is impossible. My husband was truly repentant and was willing to take the lead in rebuilding our relationship. If this were not the case, I would have to leave. Story 9. My ex-wife did not cheat before our marriage. But the first time she did it, she convinced me that she wanted to make our relationship work, so I gave her another chance. It turned out that her words were empty and unfounded. I left her after cheating again. In my opinion, it's not really once a cheater, always a cheater. But I think anyone who cheats and doesn't do the deep, personal inner work to figure out their issues will always cheat. Story 10. My 18-year-old boyfriend cheated on me my freshman year of college. We were 1,300 miles apart and had only been dating for 4 months when we left to study. He admitted I was broken. He was terribly ashamed. This was 27 years ago. We've been married for 21 years, have 2 kids and 2 dogs, and can't get enough of each other's company. He is the best thing that has ever happened to me, and I trust him with my life. Story 11. I only found out about his cheating after we got married, and it turned out that he cheated throughout the marriage. We divorced. So, nothing good. Story 12. Not married, but were in a long-term relationship for more than 4 years. She cheated on me with an ex who had previously cheated on her. They got married and he cheated on her again. She tried to come back to me after all these years, knowing that I was perfectly happy in other ways. So yes, she wanted to be my mistress. Thieves always think that everyone else steals too. The story 13. We dated for a while after the betrayal, but the relationship gradually fizzled out. We both started serious relationships with other people. Then it turned out that we were both single again at the same time. We started communicating again, sincerely trying to maintain a platonic relationship. We even tried to arrange each other with other people. But there was still a connection between us. As a result, we succumbed to our feelings and have been happy together for almost 15 years, 13 of them married. We have 2 children and complete trust. Story 14. Honestly, from the adult me to the young me, I wouldn't say it was worth it. You are young, and you have so many wonderful things to do. I have truly reconciled with my partner, and although I love him, damn, it was 4 years of my life that I will not get back. 4 years of time and effort spent working on a relationship that I could have spent doing something else. It was a missed opportunity, and if I had the chance again, I wouldn't do it. At the time, I remember browsing Reddit and thinking, 5 years for things to get better, this will be worth it. You know, I could use this energy to write a novel, learn to salsa dance, invest more in other important relationships in my life, move to another country, or become a marine biologist. There were so many other things I could have done with this time and emotional resources instead of working on reconciliation. I learned a lot from the process, and I'm more emotionally resilient now. I now have a crisis plan. But overall, it was painful and took a lot out of me. I think I could spend this energy on something more useful. Story 15. This is not with me, but with my relative. She and her husband have this situation. Every 2 years he cheats, does not feel any remorse, makes her feel guilty for wanting to leave, and in the end, they get back together, and the cycle repeats. Story 16. If they once betrayed your trust, it will be very difficult to trust them again and not look at them differently. They will most likely do this again. Story 17. She was coming out of a very abusive long-term relationship, and it turned out that in the first few months of our dating, she was still sleeping with him. She finally came clean to me saying, "We never discussed exclusivity," which was true, but I still decided to end the relationship and start dating others. About 6 months later, when I was in the middle of something very minor, she called and suggested we meet for coffee. It's been 12 years already. I trust her completely. Story 18. This is not with me, but with my friend who is 62 years old. He cheated on his wife early in their marriage. They have now been together for about 28 years. At that time, he was also heavily dependent on alcohol, but after his betrayal, he changed his life for the better. Story 19. My then girlfriend cheated on me once in college when we were dating long distance. Now we have been married for 13 years, and from the outside, it seems that everything is fine with us. She is a devoted wife and mother. We both have good jobs and are generally happy. However, our libidos are not the same, and I have been struggling with this ever since we got married. The general lack of desire on her part, and the knowledge that she once chose someone else, still haunts me sometimes, even though it happened many years ago. There were times when she admitted that she was not physically attracted to me. If I could go back, I would choose a different path. I don't know why, but when I was young, it didn't bother me so much. But now it prevents me from being a truly happy person. Story 20. I actually lost my best friend, who lived on my couch and didn't have a penny to her name. I tried to help her get back on her feet after she was released from a mental hospital, but now she's decided that her soulmate is a married man with an elderly, frail wife, and I just don't understand it. Moreover, she does not like my tone when I criticize her for this. Not everyone can be saved. Story 21. Honestly, at 21, you shouldn't be settling down yet. Moreover, try to build a life with someone who has already cheated on you. Don't let this selfish person destroy your self-esteem. You can and will definitely find someone better. Screw him to hell and move on. Just learn from this experience and learn to recognize the warning signs next time. Story 22. My parents were both married before they met each other, and both actually cheated on their partners before breaking up with them and getting married. They've been together for 30 years, while about 90% of my friends have divorced parents. Plus, their marriage is quite happy and they still love to travel together. Let me add that my mother, for example, was forced to get married quite young. She wasn't literally forced, but my grandparents were very religious, and in order for her to be allowed to live with a guy, they decided, to hell with it, let's just get married. For my father, the situation was different, but sometimes you don't know who you'll fall in love with. While I think it's usually not a good sign to marry someone who cheated on their partner with you, you can't generalize to all cases. Story 23. After 8 years of our relationship, I cheated on her, but never told her about it. 3 years later, we got married and had 2 children. After 5 years of marriage, she cheated on me. The pandemic hit, and we both made a huge effort to save our marriage, seeing it as an opportunity. It wasn't easy. We went through several marriage counselors and therapists. We took some of their advice, but decided to work on it ourselves. We worked hard on communication, ourselves, and our children. Our marriage is now stronger than ever. I rarely see success stories in such dire situations, but I am lucky to be one of them. Story 24. I was the one who changed. I was an alcoholic, and I don't even remember how it happened. I'm not looking for excuses. It was completely my fault. It was incredibly difficult, the pain and suffering I caused. We had to overcome a lot. He was with someone else many years ago, and I have never forgiven him for that. Sometimes I think I wish I had left then to save us both a lot of pain and grief. I went to therapy and stopped drinking. We had a lot of conversations. We dug a lot into past grievances. I would rather die than ever do something like that again. Story 25. I have a very straightforward view on this, but I firmly believe that a cheater will remain a cheater in most cases. If you're asking because you were cheated on, just leave the relationship. The emotional roller coaster is not worth it. Story 26, unpopular opinion, but things worked out surprisingly well for us. We met while living in different countries. During the first year, including the COVID quarantine, I found out that while we were dating, my partner had slept with someone else. It was terrible. We broke up, then got back together after many difficult but sincere conversations. He moved to Europe to be with me. We built a real-life relationship that is honestly great. And within 3 years of that, we got engaged and married. Cheating is bad. Cheating hurts. But it is important to understand. Is the person a good person who did a bad thing, or a selfish person who will continue to do bad things? Story 27. I married a man who cheated on his best friend's wife. We got divorced and my best friend stayed with his wife. He has turned into an abusive husband and they regularly break up and get back together. The children suffered greatly. Her husband never trusts her and raised his hand against her in anger. So if you're looking for an answer to the question of whether you should stay, here it is. Story 28. This is about us. We are fine. He cheated during a period where he lost his sense of identity and way of validating his self-worth. It had nothing to do with our relationship. Of course, this caused a huge scandal. At the time, I stayed with him because he had literally moved across the continent for our relationship 2 weeks prior, without any safety net. The betrayal occurred 6 months before the move, so I decided to give it another 6 months to see if we could make things right. Recovery took much longer than 6 months, but I'm glad I stayed. Many years have passed since then. Wonderful years that I will never regret. Now I sincerely do not believe that he will cheat again, and although it took time and a lot of effort, trust has returned. I think people, especially Americans from what I've heard, often view infidelity as the single biggest betrayal, even compared to other types of pain a partner can cause. I personally don't feel that way. He hurt me a lot because he was emotionally immature and struggling. Since then, he has done work on himself to become a more stable and reliable person, and therefore a partner. I think that without such an approach, in which the person who cheated is not perceived as a fundamentally immoral cheater, but as a person who has not dealt with his problems and therefore acts in a harmful way, reconciliation is impossible. Story 29. He changed during our meetings. At the time, he had just gotten divorced after 20 years of marriage. I made excuses for him and believed that he really repented and would never hurt me like that again. We got married, and as far as I know, he remained faithful for over 7 years until he got drunk while on vacation with our closest friends. He began an affair with a friend's wife while her husband and I were sleeping. I think they figured no one would ever find out, and in their drunkenness, they decided to have an affair on the weekend after we went to bed. Story 30. When I was with my ex-wife, she was married. Even though they were separated at the time and her ex-husband, Tim, ran off with another woman, he still considered our relationship to be cheating on her part. We were married for 20 years. The marriage was both good and difficult. About 5 years later, she admitted that she was homosexual. We tried to practice open relationships several times, but it didn't work because she would become very insecure if she saw me having any kind of connection and would stop it. She believed that having an affair was cheating, even in an open relationship. I'm 99% sure she cheated on me with one of her ex-boyfriends at the time. She also had a girlfriend that she didn't tell anyone about for a year. The divorce went smoothly, and she moved in with her secret girlfriend. She was later diagnosed with brain cancer, and at one point she told the kids that I had slept with almost all of their friends' parents and nannies. The children were rather sad because it confirmed that she had lost her mind before she died. I moved on with my life and married a cheater of the same caliber as myself. Her ex-husband demanded that she give him a leave to cheat. She told him that if he got that kind of leave, then so would she. He called her a dirty whore for asking this because his vacation was to sleep with other men. Their marriage lasted just long enough for them to buy a house and sleep with other people, because why not make divorce even more difficult? Last but not least is Tim, who I mentioned at the beginning. He went to prison, ironically, for a crime he didn't commit. When he got out, he married his cellmate's sister. He was a real tyrant over her. She left him and started dating a police officer. Then Tim started coming to her work and causing scandals. This led to the cop calling Tim while he and Tim's ex were having sex and sending him some videos. Tim ended up calling me while drunk and telling me that I needed to raise his son right because he was going to the police station to kick cops' asses. He didn't get there. He crashed in another part of the city and went back to prison. He married several more times, and all the marriages were just as lousy. For example, telling his in-laws that if they gave him a few million, they could have his children. Otherwise, he would hide them so that they would not be found after his wife died, number 4. But there were no more betrayals. Yes, he's back in prison. Story 31. We didn't get married, but I was the one who cheated, and he still wanted to stay together. For the first 5 months, I was texting a friend for sex while my boyfriend thought we were completely exclusive. When he found out, of course he became very angry, but he also became violent and became aggressive and more controlling. After that, we still had good moments, and there were times when I thought, I want to start a family with this man. But he didn't want to go to counseling or therapy, and I became increasingly angry with him for threatening, attacking, and damaging my things. Our relationship became a cycle of violence and broken trust on both sides until the last time he was arrested. Story 32. My best friend went through this. He cheated on a trip to Thailand, the first time this had happened to anyone, and she eventually found out. She says she tried to get over it, but their entire subsequent lives were filled with uncertainty and passive aggression. They stayed together and got married. 7 wasted years later, she claims the divorce was entirely his fault. It was a 50-50th split at best, but she was too insecure to handle a healthy relationship, let alone one built on mistrust. My friend didn't cheat again after Thailand, but for most, this is a ringing sound that can no longer be unringed. Story 33. From the stories I've seen here, it's rare for a cheater to change his ways, but it is possible. The most successful stories I've seen involve cases where cheaters were humbled. By humility, I mean that they themselves were victims of betrayal or were simply abandoned. Story 34. She doesn't know that I know about others. When we first met, she said that she had changed and was no longer cheating, although she admitted that she had cheated in past relationships. It turned out that she never changed. We're currently in the process of getting a divorce, and she's telling everyone that we're just growing apart or that it's my fault. Not because she slept with other people and realized she had feelings for one of them. Story 35. I found out about the betrayal only a few years after our marriage. I didn't have the confidence to do what I thought was right at the time and leave. I felt trapped. It caused me a lot of personal trauma, and I just swept it all under the rug. After 11 years, I pulled this and all other problems out from under the rug to deal with them. We are on the verge of divorce, and strangely enough, my confidence and self-esteem are even lower. Fun times ahead. Story 36. My now husband cheated with his girlfriend during a trip. We were in a long-distance relationship when this happened, and he came back to me a few months later, so living together and getting over the cheating was difficult. We discussed the possibility of swinging, but ultimately abandoned the idea because we were in a strange place. I also had a serious drinking problem. I once got blackout drunk and slept with someone at a wedding about 6 months after he cheated. He forgave me, and our relationship became much stronger. Unfortunately, we didn't learn our lesson, and I continued to drink. 2 years after the wedding, I again got blackout drunk and slept with someone. It was terrible. I almost do not remember anything. We're not entirely sure what happened, but I found myself in a pretty dangerous situation. This is the only time I saw my husband cry. That day, we got rid of all alcohol. We haven't looked back since then. We've been sober for 1.5 years now, and our relationship is incredible. My story is quite sad, and I guess I wanted to tell it to remind myself, but also to emphasize that people are not perfect. Monogamy is something you need to work on. My husband and I have talked a lot about how we are working on our relationship, especially since we are both charismatic and outgoing people. We realized this early in our relationship, and it helped us be more open with each other. We choose each other every day. And if that changes, we trust each other and will be open. On a separate note, I find it interesting that my infidelities were not intentional and were a result of my drinking problem. I didn't know any of the people I cheated with. This doesn't excuse me, but there are many different ways to change. Story 37. One of my closest friends dated a girl in high school. They broke up my freshman year of college because she cheated and got back together about 18 months later. They are now planning to get married in a few months. They look happy, they seem happy, but I'm worried she'll cheat on him again. He is one of my oldest and closest friends, and to see this happen would be heartbreaking. I still don't understand why he took her back. My ex-girlfriend, HSW, cheated on me, and although we are in contact now, I will probably never forgive her for it, and I definitely don't want to get her back. Story 38. I was deceived when we were still dating. I was in the army at the time. He took her back because he was an idiot, but in the end, everything worked out. We have been married for 17 years. We have 2 wonderful children, and I love her more than ever. By the way, I communicate better with her than with anyone I've ever met. She's my best friend, and I wouldn't want to spend time with anyone else. If you don't have this kind of relationship, then you'll probably end up like most of the people in these stories. Good luck. Story 39. When I was young in college, I was unfaithful. Years of therapy later, and I'm still with the same person. We have been happily married for almost 20 years and have a 7-year-old child. We go to therapy every week and use this time to deal with a variety of problems such as alcoholism, violence, shame, etc. I attended Al-Anon. We were very young and learned a lot. I don't think I was the best version of myself in my 20s, but my 40s are great. I'm glad he didn't give up on me. The work was worth it. I really sympathize with the other comments. I don't think my husband and I are normal. I will never jeopardize the life I have today. Story 40. Not with me, but with one of my friends. They were together for about 7 years before they got married. She wanted to wait for sex until marriage, he agreed. But 2 years later, he cheated on her with another woman from whom he contracted herpes. He didn't tell her about the affair and the infection, and gave her herpes through the oral method. She only found out about this when she had a flare-up and connected it with rumors at their work. She forgave him, but in her heart, she continued to blame him. I think she felt that he had ruined her and that no one else would accept her after that. They got married 7 years later, had a huge wedding that they couldn't afford, took an expensive honeymoon that they couldn't afford, and bought a house that they couldn't afford. And then they had no bedtime pleasures. She had a flare-up of herpes during the trip due to stress, and she was in pain. And then they just stopped having sex in bed. I became their neighbor a year after their wedding because they were drowning in credit debt and struggling with their mortgage, and I needed refuge from my abusive alcoholic brother and his conniving mother. A year later, he started cheating on her again, or at least making plans to do so. I was young, naive, and didn't want to get involved because I could end up homeless or end up in a bad situation again if she found out. I was silent, and it was terrible, but I could not return to my cruel home. I was about 22, 23 years old, and they were over 30. They constantly embarrassed me, but it was none of my business. I had almost no serious relationships, and I was practically a virgin. I lived with them for a little over a year, and didn't tell her how I saw his car at the local motel several times when I was home from my mother's, or that he had a secret email account on their laptop, or how he forgot I was home and took a shower with the door open, or masturbated in the living room where I could walk in. I think he was at least bi-curious and trying to see if I was interested. I admit he was very attractive, but no, I didn't tell him that she fell in love with our 19-year-old friend and colleague and would definitely cheat on him if the guy agreed to date a married woman. I knew this because I watched her and talked to him since he became one of my best friends. She became so jealous of our closeness, including one drunken night that changed our chemistry enough for her to notice, that on one group ride she literally pushed me into the road so she could walk next to him. I almost got hit by a car when it pushed me onto a 6-lane road in a popular resort town. I moved out about a year later. They took on a new tenant, a young guy. Our friend and I remained close, but their relationship grew distant. A couple of years later, she divorced her husband, and at his insistence, he took on most of their shared debts and declared bankruptcy to free them both. Think, there was more cheating on both sides, including another cute friend of mine and his girlfriend, who wanted to switch partners. Before I moved, I told them both that if they wanted to save their marriage, they had to be honest with each other, or get a divorce if they couldn't get over their problems. In the end, they did just that. She has completely shed her religious indoctrination and is happily living her life dating a young, handsome man while he works through his infidelity issues and dates an older woman. Now they're both in their 40s, and things are finally going well for them, emotionally, financially, and romantically. My friend and I went on trips without her and laughed and had a lot of fun. He eventually admitted that he had complicated romantic feelings for me that had been exacerbated by my own gender explorations and struggles. We thought about repeating our drunken hookup, but decided we were better off being friends with a little tension. He is now happily married and we sometimes play games together. I'm glad my current neighbor is asexual. Story 41. This happened to me. Here's my story. We started a friends with benefits relationship in 2017. She immediately said that she was dating others and only wanted a physical relationship with me. I agreed because I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship and didn't want to jump into another one again. We were compatible in bed and had a good time for several months. The more we talked, the more I began to develop feelings for her, and I decided that it would be better to break up and go my own way since she made it clear that she did not want anything more. So I told her that I was starting to have feelings, and it was time for us to stop seeing each other. To my surprise, she said that she was ready to date me and end her other relationship, but she needed time to end it peacefully. I agreed, and over the next month she reported that she had completed one, and then another. Great! We started dating, telling each other we loved each other, and everything was great. At some point in 2018, I was using her MacBook, and she received a message that appeared on the screen. It turned out that she had not ended one of her relationships. We already lived together, so I didn't tell her that I knew what was going on, and I started planning my departure. My original plan was to leave when she wasn't home and never talk to her again. A couple of days before I was supposed to leave, she asked what happened, and I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. I was very sad living with a man who was cheating on me. So I told her that I found out about her cheating and that I was going to leave in a few days. She completely broke down, confessed everything, She was very apologetic and never blamed me or tried to shift the blame. I've dealt with cheating before and it's quite common. She said she would do literally anything to make me stay. We talked for a long time about everything. I told her that it would take a lot of time and effort for me to trust her again. She became an open book. One of my conditions was that I could check her phone, all the apps and anything else I wanted to see at any time, no questions asked. She allowed me to register my face so I had full access and I agreed to stay. It was difficult, but gradually she regained my trust. After a couple of years, I felt that if we could handle this, we could handle anything, so I proposed to her. We got married in 2020 and everything was perfect. Since then, we have been happily married. Quick takeaway. Flirting partner lied about ending relationships when we decided to get serious, got caught, and did what was necessary to rebuild trust. A happy ending. Story 42. To be fair, we broke up for a while after the incident. There were many circumstances that helped me trust her again. She was heavily intoxicated, had a recent significant traumatic event in her family, and I was essentially absent, focused on work, including lack of support during the traumatic event. And to be honest, I was on the edge too. When this happened, I was already on dating sites and thinking about when to end our relationship. I was definitely angry, emotionally wounded, but I would have been foolish not to take responsibility for my part in moving it away from myself and for the fact that I was in a similar mood myself. In any case, we moved to different apartments and were actually separated for a while. We only got back together because she sincerely apologized, seemed truly remorseful, and wanted to try to make things work. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I think it wasn't easy for her either. The amount of vulnerability and effort required to overcome this was incredible. Honestly, even if our marriage doesn't work out, and even if it's for the same reason, I'm still proud of myself for the enormous emotional development I went through to get to this point. After we agreed to try again, we had a lot of very difficult conversations about how we got to this point, and we took steps towards each other for a long time. We started dating seriously again, and it was much better than before. Looking back, I'm not even sure we actually had a relationship before. Rather, we simply enjoyed parties and bedtime with each other. The foundations of our relationship were much more immature back then. To be honest, we were both much less mature people at the time. I'm not trying to make this sound easy or rosy. Don't get me wrong. It took years to recover, and there were many times when I questioned whether it was worth investing more time and effort instead of starting over with someone else. I think we both realized that if we want to have something good, something that works for us, we need to really work on the relationship. I often think about how I wasn't a good partner to any of my previous girlfriends. I didn't even know how to build relationships properly. For me personally, one of the keys was to become much more comfortable with myself and understand myself better. It helped a lot in both communicating to her what I wanted and understanding it myself. With very vulnerable and transparent communication came clarity about whether we were suited for each other and how to be together. I had to get to a point where I had nothing to lose for this to actually happen. I know some people are capable of this simply because they have confidence in themselves, but I wasn't that kind of person back then. Paradoxically, it was the absence of fear, loss, judgment, etc., that opened up new levels of intimacy and trust with another person, which I didn't even think about. Now I live with the understanding that there is no other way. And if you're honest and vulnerable with someone and they trample you, that's their problem. This way of thinking really puts me at ease, not only in my relationships with her or women in general, but with the people in my life. Everything is great now, better than I could ever imagine in a relationship with another person. These feelings led me to propose to her, and that's where we are now. Story 43. Unfortunately, I cheated on my current wife before we got engaged. It was quite hard. I had to work hard on myself, and fortunately, I got better. Several years have passed, and we recently celebrated our first anniversary. After a year of therapy, I understand why I cheated and know that I have to choose it every day. So far, so good. The temptation is always there, but I know it's not worth it. I was very lucky. Story 44. My sister's boyfriend tried to cheat on her with her sister right before their wedding. She left him for a while, but then returned and they got married. 10 years and 3 kids later, she discovered he was cheating on her with his best friend's wife, who is also my sister's cousin, after she went to the doctor for a vaginal rash that turned out to be herpes. She's still with that bastard. Story 45. I know people on this site like to claim that if a person cheated once, they will always cheat and can never change. But that is simply not true. People can grow, work on themselves in therapy or on their own, or simply mature. I don't think cheating should ever be justified, but it isn't always due to the cheater's selfishness and indifference to others' feelings. Situations are rarely so clear-cut. My wife and I started dating while she was in a relationship with a guy who was neglectful and borderline abusive. She was very unhappy, but was afraid to leave because she thought he would hurt himself. She broke up with him shortly after we started dating, so the cheating didn't last long. We both regret that it started out that way, and that she didn't break up with him before we started dating. We have been happily married for 14 years, and there has been no infidelity, doubt, or jealousy in our relationship. My ex-girlfriend married the guy she cheated on me with, and they are still together and doing well. It was a long time ago, and I have no hard feelings towards her. He's a good man, and I'm glad to see them both happy. I know a couple where the girl cheated on the guy while they were engaged. They went to couples counseling and worked through their issues before marriage, and have now been married for over 20 years without any problems. I know some people will comment that it's only a matter of time before they cheat again, or that I don't know if those other couples are actually happy and faithful, and maybe that's technically true, but I know these people in real life and seeing their situations, and that means more than when someone on the internet speculates about people they've never met. Story 46. I was a constant cheater. Although my current wife and I have been together for 16 years, I recently celebrated 11 years of complete fidelity and 6 years of marriage to my fifth wife. This is the first marriage in which I can confidently say that I have never spoken even in a flirtatious tone to another woman, or man, for those who like to get into details. I can attest that some trust can be restored, and while wounds may heal over time, sometimes the scar on a partner is permanent. From time to time, I see how resentment comes up in our disputes, but I am confident that I have won her trust. I agree with confused_family 796. Avoid marrying someone you don't trust, but I'll go further. Why stay in a relationship with a person who gives you reasons not to trust him over and over again? If I could take back the harm I caused to my wife, I would, but I can't. And because of this, there remains an invisible barrier between us. It only takes 1 second to destroy trust, but it can take a lifetime to rebuild it. P.S. My name has nothing to do with this post, but is associated with the employer I worked for. Story 47. More than 7 years have passed, and as far as I know, he has not cheated again. He works long hours from home and has to record his work hours, so honestly, I believe he's probably not cheating. Sometimes I check his phone and find nothing suspicious. Honestly, if he did it again, I'm not sure I'd care. We have 2 children, one of whom has autism, and I'm too tired. I would just tell him that my cupcake shop is closed, and now he can get everything outsourced. Story 48. After cheating on both sides and several breakups, we couldn't be happier than we are now. We have 3 beautiful sons, financial stability, our own goals and ambitions, and communication that many couples admire and, on occasion, ask us how we do it. It was a long journey, and I almost didn't go back down this road the last time, but we knew we had to be civilized for the sake of the children. After some time, we realized that everything was perfect, but we still missed each other. We gave it another chance, and now I think this is the best time of my life and everything is only going up. Story 49. Thank you for asking. Serial cheater. She hid the money, made me do unpleasant things. She took everything I had except books and kitchen utensils. To be completely honest, we cheated on her first husband, and for that I will always feel guilty. I've had terrible karma since then, and I think it's well-deserved. I wish he was still married to her, but that would be bad. For him, she will always cheat. I'm not sure she knows any other way. She was the type to constantly flirt with men, no matter their age. She needed attention. This gave her power over them because she knew they wanted her. This was her confirmation of her own importance. I was going to cancel the wedding 5 days before, but she came home with a pregnancy test. Positive result. I loved this child from the moment I saw the positive test result, and I still love it. Now both. There is almost nothing left in my life. She took everything. The thought that I now have no clutter or weight to lug around is comforting in a way, but at least I'm still alive. You never know, maybe I'll win the lottery. God, she was so angry and bitter. Karma is a very patient thing. Story 50. We've come a long way, and now we're doing just fine. After I decided to forgive, we discussed boundaries and what we would do next. One of the important points was to never mention cheating in quarrels and not to use it as a weapon. We've both changed a lot, and I'm so happy I gave us another chance. His real nature is not evil. He is not a bad person, so his repentance was sincere and real. I also needed to change to truly see him and appreciate his efforts. You can overcome anything if you both want it and work at it.